I'm Stephen Willis, host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast starting December 13th. I'm here to tell you that you can subscribe now on Apple and Spotify, and I'll be sure to let you know the new YouTube link when it comes out. Listen to the show and hear a perspective that is completely different than those that are already out there. I know their world after 10 years in the media, and I also know the staff's world thanks to 3 years in the Manning Center. So subscribe now and hit the bell and get the reminder you need because you won't want to miss this. All right, on today's show, a farewell to the POMcast. After 2 years, we're going to put this aside and join the Locked On Ole Miss network. So tune in for that. And also, thank you very much for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the future Locked On Ole Miss podcast, your first listens of the day. We are on all platforms for free, and we're working on a YouTube link as well. Whenever we have that, you will have it too. So let's see, doing this real quick. Stick around. Hey, welcome to the POMcast with Stephen Willis. We're going to start in a few minutes, but I want to tell you to hit up our social sites, retweet, share, comment, like, do all of that stuff. It can only help us out and it'll make the show even better. But we're getting ready to give you a lot of good Ole Miss information, and I just thought I would tell you that because the POMcast is starting. Well, it's starting right now. Wait, no, that's a little early. It is starting right about now. All right, welcome to the final POMcast. We've reached our end with the POMcast. Thank you very much for tuning into that. I'm wearing my Tampa Bay Bandit stuff because the USFL is the one league out there where somebody that is my age can say you've been a lifelong fan of something even though it hasn't started until next spring. So I just remember when Steve Spurrier and all those guys were throwing the balls around, and I was at that perfect childhood age to have plenty of nostalgia for the USFL. So the Tampa Bay Bandits, a little bit of bandit ball doing that. So thank you very much for tuning in. This is a real big thing. I'm just kind of impressed by that. Before we get started, though, I do want to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by Sonos. Sonos is the official sponsor of ESPN College Football. Go to Sonos.com to learn more. I'm very excited that what's going on. We're moving to the Locked On network starting on the 13th. This is the last POMcast. We've kind of been doing everything in the Locked On format this week to get everybody ready for that. There's links down below in the description. If you want to subscribe and hit notifications, you'll know when we're going to be live because it's going to be in different places. And we're working on a YouTube channel as well. Whenever I have that link, you will as well. We're going to live stream the show much like it is now. It will just originate from that Locked On page. And we're also going to be able to do things like super chat and super stickers and all that in the chat as well. So tune into that. It should be a lot of fun. But I remember when I started the POMcast. I started this in March of 2020. So we're almost 2 years in at this point, doing the podcast. And in those 2 years, I remember like when the audience would hit 10, 15, 20 at the very beginning, when those downloads were such a huge deal. And I remember that of part of what's really just going on. And to see what it's grown into today, to where this year during football season, starting in March or April, we started setting download records for month by month. Every month it increased. And not only increased, but increased by like 33% from month to month, the growth. And that was just impressive. And then, like I said, Locked On became interested in what we were doing, made us an offer we can't refuse, and the POMcast basically gone away. The good news is, though, as part of the deal, I retain the POMcast. The POMcast can't happen while I'm doing the Locked On stuff. But if for some reason I leave Locked On Ole Miss, the POMcast continues to exist, so I can go right back to this format. But right now, this is a farewell to the POMcast, and I'm looking a lot of fun into doing that. Also, we are going to be dark next week. We might do some pairings of other people's shows, but you will not see our shows. Next week is a Disney vacation. I know everybody's thinking, is like, why are you going to Disney when you live 30 minutes away? We're actually renting a house and doing the normal vacation thing that people do at Disney. We're going to have a lot of people come over. I think 13, and we're going to go to a house, do Disney, Magic Kingdom a couple days, Epcot, Animal Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, the whole 9 yards. We're going to do medieval times and all of that. We're going to do a real vacation. We might as well live in South Mississippi, essentially, and just vacation with what's going on. We will be dark next week because of that. All right. Today on the show, we want to talk a little bit about the visit that I think is already happening. I've gotten conflicting information, but I think Dillon Gabriel is on campus at the University of Mississippi at Ole Miss, starting his visit. I think he's there. I'm not going to confirm this. I'm not going to necessarily say that, but I think he is there. So he's going to go through the process of learning the offense, reacquainting with Jeff Lebby, meeting Lane Kiffin over the next 48 hours. So that means about 9 o'clock on Sunday, he'll probably fly out. I think those visits are on 48 hours or something like that. He's going to see the highlight video. He's going to see the facilities. They're going to tour him all around. He's probably going to be treated like an absolute king. And honestly, he should be. Now, he is a tremendous deep ball thrower. If you are Braylon Brown, if you are Brandon Buckhalter, J.J. Henry, Jalen Knox, those guys, John Rice Plumlee, all of those, his ability to throw the ball downfield should be a plus for you. Now remember, he was at Central Florida under Josh Heupel, so that version of the Baylor spread is going to look more like the Tennessee version, and that's fine. That's what they do. But he can also start, if you go back and look at his 2019 highlights when he was a true freshman, and then see his 2020 highlights, 19 was Jeff Lebby, 2020 was without Jeff Lebby, 2021 was Gus Malzahn. If you look at the maturity and the growth of him over that, you see a guy that threw the ball his first year under Jeff Lebby primarily outside the hash marks. Keep it outside. Keep it out of the middle of the field. Hey, Cody, how you doing, man? I think we're going to come out of this season pretty much okay. I think we're going to be okay this season. And the fact that Dillon Gabriel's on campus doing an official visit means that Lane Kiffin's intending to stay here. And if Lane Kiffin's intending to move, if Lane Kiffin moves, Jeff Lebby is going to. He's a de facto coach in waiting. So we'll see with this Dillon Gabriel situation. I'm excited. The rumor of the contract is somewhere around $8.5 million, $8 million, I think. And it'll be interesting. Now, Coach signed an extension before the Outback Bowl last year. The media and everybody else found out the terms of that extension in July. So don't expect things to work quickly. They work at their own pace now. But just, I'm kind of with you. Just get him signed. But Dillon Gabriel is a tremendous deep ball thrower. And early in his career, he threw primarily outside the hashes. But you can see him, if you look at his 2019, 2020 highlights, and early in 2021, he started working more in the middle of the field. And you see a grasp of the offense, and there's just a look to him the way he carries himself. I think he's going to be a really good player, but it's one of those situations where I want to see what it looks like. He did use the middle of the field. I want to see a little bit of a tight end. There's a tight end in the portal. There's rumors about him. We'll see where it goes. But if they get him along with those wide receivers, Dillon Gabriel, and get a running back there in the backfield, they have a team that talent-wise is above what they were this year. That's the amazing thing. Now, Matt Corral was really good, but you fit in those other guys. have like potential top 20 players at a couple positions. It's really interesting. And also, they recruited Aaron Brule. They're recruiting Aaron Brule from Mississippi State, who entered the transfer portal yesterday. Lane Kiffin marked that with a retweet when it was announced. So that is something to keep an eye on as well. BetOnline has you covered all season long with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football season continues to march to the playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all sports action this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, UFC, to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest ways to bet for all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. And of course, thank you for tuning in to the future Locked On Ole Miss podcast and making it your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms and soon to be YouTube. So, we have that. We have the potential for Dillon Gabriel to be in town. We talked to Cody just a second ago. He dropped a question. The rumor and the smokes about an extension and all that is very much in that. Lane Kiffin's in town today. That's the reason there's a delay on this extension, is Lane Kiffin's been out recruiting all over the South, and the efficiency of working probably didn't have him coming to Oxford until this weekend. I mean, that's just facts. I'm kind of feeling right now about bowl games, and I'm curious about bowl games. And, you know, the Ole Miss Notre Dame game got a little bit of its luster back with the hiring of Marcus Freeman. And his announcement on Twitter today was really good, and it was worth tuning in for. If you haven't seen it, go give it a look. I mean, it was a nice announcement to their team. But so Notre Dame has a little bit of their mojo back because they kept every coach except for the head coach in there. And there's a potential for them to get back into the playoffs by them doing that. So if they would have waited until after this weekend, whenever everything's announced, it would weigh on the committee's mind. But since there's a full staff, 9 of the 10 coaches in Notre Dame are staying. The only coach that is leaving is Brian Kelly and his wonderful fake Southern accent. And that's pretty interesting to me. Now, LSU is getting really agitated. Like the fan bloggers and everything going on in LSU, they're getting really agitated right now about people piling on Brian Kelly for going to LSU. There's a lot of people that's turning on that. And remember, we talked about this yesterday, that a little bit behind that is the Fox-ESPN rivalry that is developing in college sports. Believe me, that's good for college sports. That's going to cause ESPN to have to raise their game, and it's also going to raise Fox's game. But because of that, there are groups of media that sit out there that are very anti-SEC. You have people like Bruce Feldman that is praising the Lincoln Riley move to USC, a Fox conference, and vilifying the Brian Kelly move to LSU. And also trying to talk about Lane Kiffin being available for basically any Fox conference job that is out there. And if you understand the motivation and what they're coming from, you can understand a little bit and know what you need to take seriously. Also, this is just my opinion, and I know nothing, but with Oklahoma still being available, and they're soon to be an SEC school, but I'm starting to think that Brent Venables is not going to be the guy. I think that Oklahoma could have hired him at any point during this season, during this week, I mean. And at any point they could have announced him, they could have done whatever, but they haven't. Which leads me to believe their guy that they have earmarked is working this weekend. And they're trying to not go crazy to make it stand out. So the person I would keep an eye on for this weekend for Oklahoma is Dan Lanning, the defensive coordinator at Georgia. Oklahoma has a nice history of promoting quarterbacks to their head job. It's a weird job like that. They don't generally do well with established guys, and they want a guy that they can kind of mold to fit their own fit. And they've done that in the assistant rank. Dan Lanning at Georgia, he was a heck of a coach. He got to start with Mike Norvell at Memphis, and Mike Norvell secretly was very cutthroat at Memphis. He wanted the best staff he could get, and if you weren't giving him exactly what you wanted, he just turns you loose. The bad side of that is if you gave him exactly what you wanted, you were good enough that everybody else started to take notice, and that's what happened with Dan Lanning, who went from Memphis to Georgia. And that defense this year has just been absolutely fantastic, and I think Oklahoma is intrigued by that defense because they've been so offense-centric for the last 10 years. They are intrigued by that defense. You have to go back, honestly, to Brent Venables when they were a defensive power. But the fact that Venables and Dan Lanning are being mentioned so favorably for this job, that's kind of an interesting thought that Joe Castiglione was having. But that's what I'm looking for. It could be somebody like Mario Cristobal or something like that, but I think it's Dan Lanning, and this is just a guess. A partially educated guess, but it's a guess. And it'll be interesting to see once that happens. The coaching carousel is essentially over. I mean, Virginia came open yesterday. They're talking about Miami and everybody worrying about Miami. Miami lost their athletic director because their boosters, they basically have a civil war going on down there right now of what they want to be. And any AD that's going to be fired, their first job is not going to be to hire a football coach. It is going to be to unify their base and unify their boosters. So I don't look for Manny Diaz to move this year. So that would essentially make the coaching carousel stop. And I don't think the offensive coordinator is going to end up being Jeff Lebby at Georgia, especially with Dan Lanning. It's going to be a pro-style guy. It's going to look more like Todd Monken and everything that's going on with the Georgia Bulldogs, because those guys protect their defense. Any offenses out there, they're not going to do a ton of play volume offensively. Those guys protect their defense. They're going to, I would expect anything crazy, but they're expecting 70 plays a game for both offenses, not 90 plays a game. Now, Ole Miss is going for 90 plays a game. That's the reason they play the type of defense they play. Play volume. It's important because play volume is an absolute thing. Duke, I think Duke is probably going to get one of those assistant coaches that nobody's really thinking about. I mean, it could be somebody like Josh Gaddis at Michigan could get that job. But I think that's the direction they're going to go. I'm curious to see what Coach Cutt's going to do. Not necessarily coaching, but maybe he'll move off the field and kind of tweak that retirement even a little bit more, because his buyouts at this point have to be really freaking good, honestly. So let's see. This weekend's game, whenever we come back, we will talk a little bit about this weekend's games again. My feeling at the moment is now Alabama winning the game outright over Georgia. I've talked myself into that as the week has gone on. But Georgia's the better team. Georgia should win. I look at it, if it's just on paper, you look at it and you're like, okay, Georgia. Yeah, obviously Georgia. But then you figure out about the thing I talked about before the Ole Miss Alabama game, that teams sometimes lose the game just based off the logo on the helmet. You see the numbers on the helmet and all of a sudden Pete starts rolling down your leg and you end up losing the game. This is going to be the biggest game of the year by far for Georgia. I've told y'all all year, either quarterback could go 12-0 against this schedule. They have a good team. Everything's going on. Either quarterback could have gone 12-0. What they needed JT Daniels for is the SEC championship game. What they need JT Daniels for is the college football playoff. Now, Stetson Bennett has so much capital with that fan base, they can't play JT Daniels. It's going to be a Tua reverse type situation if JT Daniels gets into the game. And it'll be interesting to see, but this is the honestly last chance for him to show. And I think Stetson Bennett, I'm worried about him against Alabama. You take Will Anderson, you take Henry To'oTo'o, and you limit Georgia's passing game to where Alabama knows what's coming. That's real similar to what Auburn did last week with TJ Finley and Tank Bigsby and those guys. And they scored 10 points. And the whole secret to beating Georgia is having a defense that can hold Georgia to under 10 points or less. It's a game that you have to win 17-10. Because their defense isn't going to give up over 20 points. So you have to win that game 17-10. 13-10, 14-10, something like that has to be a game you can win. In modern college football, that is so rare. That is Georgia's wheelhouse. If Georgia scores 21 points, it's over. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. And it's honestly gotten to the point where I'm like, Stetson Bennett can go 12-0 against the SEC. I think Stetson Bennett can win the SEC championship. I'm curious what Stetson Bennett's going to be able to do against the Michigan Wolverines, against the Oklahoma State Cowboys. That's what I'm kind of curious. I want to see a Georgia-Michigan game because that game is going to be just physically dominating. They're both going to try to overpower each other. And you got Aiden Hutchinson and all that going after the quarterback. There's some matchups there that I would be interested in watching. And a Georgia-Michigan national championship game would be something completely different that we haven't seen before. And it would do wonders for the ratings. The flip side of it is, of what I want, is if Michigan were to lose to Iowa, they would not make the playoff. And none of the alliance teams would make the playoff. There'd be no Big Ten teams. There'd be no Pac-12 teams. There'd be no ACC teams. All of a sudden, you would have essentially an SEC and Big 12 invitational. And that is something I'm interested in as well. All right, don't compare Built Bar to holiday desserts. We don't want people to feel guilty about enjoying the holidays. Between this holiday season, grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar and even better than a candy bar. Built Bar, filled with holiday goodness, rich with decadent flavor, covered in chocolate, but amazingly low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat, and high in protein. You get the best of both worlds. Want to cozy up with something warm? Here's a holiday secret. Dip your Built Bar into a piping hot cocoa. Let it melt a little bit and give your beverage a little bit of that Built Bar flavor. Plus, you'll have a nice melty Built Bar to go with it. Be sure to have a couple of napkins on hand. Go to BuiltBar.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Again, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That's Built.com. Built Bar. Seems like it's going to be pretty good. So I am pretty excited about all the championship games that's going on. You know, I talked about the Alabama-Georgia game. It has to be a low-scoring game for Alabama to win. I know Alabama's explosive offensively, but the defensive line has been shown to be able to affect Alabama's offense, like really affect Alabama's offense. And in doing so, I mean, now Georgia's in the building. I think Dan Lanning and Kirby Smart are going to blitz Bryce Young into oblivion. I think a play, maybe, they'll be able to hit Jamison Williams over the top. But this is a game that this is the old school Alabama defense from back in the day. This is a boa constrictor. And I think they are going to turn tables against Alabama. And they're going to end up winning this game like 24-10. I think that's what I'm thinking. I've talked myself into Georgia winning again, even though every part of my body makes me think that Alabama, for some reason, is going to be able to pull it out. But I think Georgia's probably going to win this game 24-10. I'm interested in the Pac-12 championship game. Will Utah be able to outduel Oregon tonight? We will see. Iowa and Michigan, it would be a very wonderful thing if there was no Alliance teams in the playoff whenever they're trying to thwart the playoff expansion, and they would cost themselves berths by not being in it. Same thing goes with the ACC. That'd be fun to see as well. I think that's going to do it for the POMcast. I'm going to give you a couple minutes back early for our farewell edition. Tune in December 13th for the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Search your favorite podcatcher. We're on all things for the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. There's an old feed that's already in there. If you search that one and it comes up, subscribe to it. That's where we're going to be. Whenever we get a YouTube link, we're going to put that up. If we do not have one by December 13th, we are going to go live right here. We're going to do video either way. So understand that. But once we have a YouTube link, we're going to post that, and we're going to do the chat and the whole 9 yards that we're planning on to do for the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Rumor is Dillon Gabriel in town right now for the next 48 hours. Obviously, if he commits this weekend, there will be no shows next week. We will be completely dark. I'm going to enjoy a little bit of Disney vacation, and that should be a lot of fun. So anyway, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. The next one will be instead of the future, it'll be the first Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Now make your second listen Locked On Bets, your daily one-stop shop for all your gambling needs. Locked On Bets, hosted by your boy Q, with expert analysis and insight from Lee Sterling, is free and available on all platforms. POMcast has been a heck of a ride. Thank you very much for taking it with me. Whenever we meet again, it'll be the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Until then, though, hotty toddy.